Welcome to Clear is the New Confident. I am Casey Watts, speaker, author, and the host of this show. If you are a high-achieving, driven woman who has ever replayed a conversation and second-guessed everything that you said, or found yourself saying yes to things that you later regret, or have held yourself back from making a bold decision because you didn't think you were credible enough, didn't have the authority, or weren't quite ready, this is the show for you. On this podcast, we are making space for confidence, and it all starts with clarity. Clarity about who you want to be, clarity about how you want to show up, and clarity about what you want from both work and life. Now, with all of that said, let's dive into today's episode and make some space for confidence. Let's see, there we are. Okay. Sometimes when I'm recording through this platform, I clearly don't know what's going on, but I just keep going for it anyway. I'm glad you're here. Hopefully you can hear me and this is not a bust and I have to re-record, but I am excited that you have joined in to listen to today's podcast episode or watching if you are on YouTube and watching. I wanted to be really clear about something today, and that is the purpose of this podcast and the purpose of the book. So in the beginning of this podcast, one of the things that I mentioned is that we are making space for confidence. That's the title of today's episode, is Create Space for Confidence. And I want to be really clear about what I mean by that, because that is the premise of the upcoming book, Clear's the New Confident. So the book, working title, of course, is Clear's the New Confident. Stop second guessing, say what needs to be said, and stand firm in your integrity. Written for high-achieving, people-pleasing women who are impact-driven and, at least a few years, if not several years into their career, you're the person who is always going after the next big thing, not necessarily always because someone else has told you that that's what you should go for, but although they may have because they've recognized you're a high achiever, but because there is this internal desire in you to go farther. And this book and this podcast come from not only my own experiences with the things that I just mentioned, but I've been interviewing dozens of women who are sharing very similar stories. And so I thought, why not share one of the many stories that I have in my past that kind of illuminates the purpose behind this book and who it might be for. So I want to start by letting you know that no one ever warned me that being a high achiever and people pleaser would likely lead to my downfall. And just so you know, there's not just one downfall across my career. There have been a few downfalls, depending on what you qualify as a downfall. So let me paint a picture of this downfall moment where my stomach was churning and my blood was boiling, and it still does when I think about this moment. I am sitting in my boss's office. I'm on this small, uncomfortable bench that's directly across from her. She's sitting on the other side of her desk. She's got the door closed. The offensive fluorescent lights are on, even when the norm is there are low lights with lamps. And she has laid out my printed job description and duties before us, and she proceeds to take a red pen to it. And here's what she was doing. She was changing my job description and my job duties mid-year. And it had been a rough year. I was the academic coordinator. She was the principal. And you'll undoubtedly, when you read the book, you'll hear more small stories about that year. But this particular moment was like the last little block, in a Jenga tower. You're pulling apart block by block by block. The tower's still standing, and then all of a sudden, there's that one block that is plucked out that makes the entire tower tumble. Well, this was the moment that made my pride completely fall. She went on in this monologue because it wasn't at all a conversation. And I noticed throughout this monologue that my shoulders were curving inward. My ears were growing hot with embarrassment. There were so many things that I wanted to say, right? So many things that I wanted to say that I could have said, that hindsight I should have said. But instead, I sat there and I just passively took each very calm, condescending word as though it was a slap to the face. Every overly academic and professional word out of her mouth was coated with disdain. And humiliation was intended, I believe, and it absolutely was achieved. No, I did not cry in her office, but the moment that I closed my car door after I left, and this was after hours, right? So the parking lot's empty. We were the only two people there. I leave. She's still in her office. I close the car door and the tears just fall in sheets. And I drove the long way home, which I usually do if I need some think time. I just take the long way home, or I will drive past my house and then go make some laps until I feel like I'm ready to walk in the house. And the whole drive home, I'm replaying the situation in my mind, and I'm thinking about what I wish I would have said or what I wish I would have done. But I also imagined the things that I would say if one day I ever got the opportunity to get back at her, I guess, with my words. And by the way, that day never came, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that it never came. So I was infuriated, right? I was infuriated. It stuck with me for a long time. Thank goodness I was working at a school at the time. And so we were middle of the year. We were going into break season. So we had some breaks. And I will also say that after that moment, my husband and I were in the process of becoming adoptive parents. And so I had all of these other things in my personal life going on that I was able to focus on, so that I wasn't having to place all of my attention and focus on this downfall moment. So I'm grateful for that. And then by the end of the year, my husband and I had adopted. I took some time off at the end of the school year, and then following that, I knew I wasn't going to be going back into that position. And of course, here I am today, standing confidently saying that everything worked out as it should have. But still, I was infuriated. And obviously, there are a lot of things that I think she could have and should have handled differently. But I want to tell you this, and forgive my French. I was also mad as hell at myself. Okay? I was mad at myself. I was mad that for a few different reasons. I was mad that things had gotten to the point that they'd gotten to, because clearly I could have handled things a lot better leading up to this point. And I'll talk more about that in the book as well, about, how things could have been different for me. And I was really mad that I hadn't said some of the things that I felt needed to be said, not only in that moment, but leading up to, like, across the year. Why didn't I say some of the things that I felt needed to be said? Why did I hold them in? Why did I just take it? And I also was mad that, this moment laid before me all of these insecurities, and it shattered my confidence. And I tell you this story because the thing about being a high achiever who is eager to make a significant impact is that you can sometimes become a victim. And maybe you become a victim of others' insecurity or their insecure behaviors. I want to tell you what I mean by that. Okay, I'm going to list out a few different things that may showcase you being a victim of others' insecure behaviors. So here's the first thing. You notice that you are pulled into the inner circle quickly in an organization, but you're also thrown under the bus at the drop of a hat. Or maybe, here's the second thing, you're built up with these non committal attaboys, like, good job. We are proud to have you as part of this company, this school, this organization. But on the flip side of that, you are beat down with backhanded remarks when things don't go the right way or their way. Third could be you exceed expectations. You are highly qualified, but you get passed up for opportunities because you don't fit a mold or you don't fit the traditional preset model. Or fourth, maybe you share incredible ideas, but somebody else ends up taking credit for them. This is what I mean by becoming a victim of others' insecurities or their insecure behaviors. Okay? And sometimes, and I'm not saying that that's always the case, but sometimes that happens. And then eventually, because of these prior experiences, perhaps you end up becoming a victim of your own limiting beliefs and burdensome narratives. Here's what that might look like. You say yes to almost everything when you really want to say no. Or you have questions to ask and things to say, but then you second guess whether you should say them because you fear you might be judged. Or you want to be this authentic, individualistic person who stands firm in her integrity, but you oddly, and this is the strangest thing, and it happens to so many of us, myself included, you oddly have this desire to be a part of this inner circle. It's the strangest thing. We're going to be talking about that on this podcast and in the book. Or maybe, and this is the final one, you want to go for that next position, and or it might be a position in your organization, or it could be a very worthy personal goal. For example, you might be like me thinking, I'm ready to start my own business, or I'm ready to move into this new path for myself, or with the organization, I want to go to that next level, but you doubt your credibility and you doubt your skills. Give me a amen or hallelujah in the or a me too in the chat if that is you. Just throw it down there in the comments, me too. If you've noticed either becoming a victim of others' insecurities or a victim of your own limiting beliefs and negating narratives. Okay, you might be thinking me too. And if that's the case, I want to mention 3 really important things that I believe about this victimhood. Okay, here are the 3 things I believe about this victimization. Bear with me. I'm going to push back on us. Number 1, usually there is no one holding us back but ourselves. Even when we are in the midst of a potentially hard situation, there's no one holding us back but ourselves. That's number 1. Number 2, another belief that I have about this victimhood is we are often victims of second guessing and people pleasing because we fail to take action. We're victims of second guessing and people pleasing because we're not taking any actions. And this leads to the third thing that I believe. We almost always fail to take action because we haven't created space for confidence. So, the title of this episode is Create Space for Confidence. It's the very first chapter in the book. So, what do I mean by creating space for confidence? There are 3 areas we need to create space for, intentionally create space for, if we want to be able to avoid this victimization or this victimhood for ourselves. here are the three things that we want to get really clear on. Clarity of identity, meaning who we are. Who are you? What are your values? What are your beliefs? Do you have a foundation to stand firm upon? So clarity of identity. The second is clarity of presence. How do you show up when you are with others? How do you show up for yourself? And in what ways are you noticing that you're second guessing, and how are you trying to combat that? Or are there situations where you're presenting yourself in one way, but it doesn't align with your core values and beliefs? And so you recognize, I'm a chameleon in this moment, but not a chameleon in a good way. I'm a chameleon in the fact that I'm trying to fit into this inner circle, and I don't really even want to be a part of that inner circle because it goes against my values. So that's clarity of presence. How do I show up for myself? How do I show up around other people? And then finally, the third thing we want to get really clear on is clarity of purpose. Where am I headed? But also, and this is really important, why am I headed there? Where am I headed? Where am I going? And why? What's the reasoning behind it? I believe, which is the reason for this podcast and the book, that if you can gain clarity in these three areas, you are absolutely certain to courageously stop second guessing, say what needs to be said, and stand firm in your integrity. After all, clear is the new confident. So from this episode, I'd love to know what you've taken, what has been most useful for you or most valuable. And I hope that one of the things you are taking from this is, number one, you relate in some way. And recognize, number two, that it's important to create space for confidence. And number three, where is it that you need to create space for confidence? Is it clarity of your identity? Is it clarity of presence? Or is it clarity of purpose? Could it potentially be all three? Okay, that is today's episode. Leave me a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Email me, casey@clarity-driven.com. And then finally, go to clearsthenewconfident.com, and you're going to see what this book and this movement and this podcast is all about, and have a chance to be a part of it as it grows and expands. I want you to know exactly when the book is coming out. So if you're curious about that, go there, enter your email address. You will get notifications about the process of this book, and you'll also get weekly emails that give you some strategies and tools for all of the things that I just mentioned in this podcast. Okay, guys, I look forward to hearing from you, and until next time, go create some space for confidence. Bye, everybody. Hey, listener, I am so honored that you listened to today's episode, and I hope you gained something valuable from it. I'd also be honored if you did me 3 solid favors. First, subscribe to this show. I've got a lot of great content coming up, and I don't want you to miss any of it. Second, be sure you're following me on social media platforms. You can find me at Catch Up with Casey on LinkedIn or Instagram. And finally, if you are looking to book a dynamic and relatable speaker for your next event, conference, or retreat, I would love to bring a message about how the craft of clarity makes a significant impact on both leadership and life. Until next time, always remember, clarity precedes capacity.